Hello and welcome to Sketchplanations the podcast, sharing facts, ideas and philosophies to help fuel your own interesting conversations. I'm engineer and broadcaster Rob Bell. That there is the creator of Sketchplanations, Jono Hey. Hello, Jono.
Hello.
And this is entrepreneur and past winner of The Apprentice, Tom Pellereau. Hello, Tom.
Hello.
This time we're talking about Jono's sketch that explains antipodes, or is it antipodes? I'm not sure. You'll see Jono's sketch for this as the artwork for the episode, but if you head to sketchplanations.com, you can find it in its full form. Now, Jono, when I hear the word, especially when it's pronounced antipodes, I think of Australia and New Zealand. But please tell us, is there more to this word than just that?
Well, I was told about this by a colleague at one point.
About what?
About
Antipodes?
the
Antipode?
antipode to where you are at the moment.
The antipode to where you are at the moment. Explain.
Yeah, so the antipode is the point exactly on the other side of the planet. If you were to take a line from where you're standing and draw it straight through the center of the planet and come out the other side.
Gotcha.
So diametrically opposite. You take the longest line that you can draw from your feet to come out the other end of the planet, and that is your antipode.
The confusion between our pronunciation here or about the pronunciation. Antipodes is spelt the same way, right? Antipodes.
Mm-hmm.
And for us in the UK, we talk quite casually about the Antipodes being Australia and New Zealand, right? On the other side of the world, as a kind of loose sense, whereas this is a very specific sense and very relative to wherever you are, your exact point on the earth.
That's right. And you know what? I am familiar with that use of antipodes.
Yeah.
Antipodes.
And Antipodean as an adjective.
Yeah. But I was really talking about the sort of geographical, physical sense here of the antipode. So you can be standing anywhere on the planet and you have an antipode, which is your point directly opposite. So it's not just things in that part of the world, is wherever is opposite from you. And I picked out an example on the sketch of New Zealand and Spain. So if you stand in Spain, there are certain points in Spain where the longest line through the center of the planet has you coming out in New Zealand. And there are a few other ones like that. So for example, if you're in Hawaii, you're opposite Botswana. If you're in Argentina, you are opposite some parts of China. Chile overlaps a bit with Russia. And I think you can do a sort of more like an east-west antipode, which is like essentially around the equator. So if you're sort of in Ecuador, your point directly opposite is somewhere around Indonesia. But I think what's quite interesting is actually if you start to look at any of this, and Tom, I was looking at you figuring this out just before, that almost everywhere you do this, except for some of these few places which I've mentioned, you end up in the ocean. So your antipode is somewhere in an ocean. And I think what is sort of remarkable, and actually I only realized somewhat later in life, honestly, that most of the land is in the Northern Hemisphere and far more of the people, which is really why most of the antipodes don't end up on a bit of land on the other side of the planet, that you're in the middle of the ocean. I was looking at some of the stats. So for example, I think Northern Hemisphere has like 68% of the land, Southern Hemisphere about 32%.
Yeah.
And Northern Hemisphere has around 87 to 90% of the population of the planet.
Is it that high?
And only 10 to 13% in the Southern Hemisphere.
And when you add to that the fact that I think around 70% of the Earth is covered by our seas and our oceans, then it's no surprise that most antipodes are in the water somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? It's one of these ones I feel like you spend all the time growing up, like looking at maps, and typically you end up with the Mercator map. And I've always sort of focused the Mercator sort of skews more of the Northern Hemisphere and makes it larger than the Southern Hemisphere.
Yep. The Mercator map being the the map of the entire world, the sphere, if you like, of the globe being flattened out and how that is presented to us.
Yeah, and a separate sketch on that, which we can talk about sometime. And it was really interesting. Like, it allows you to do essentially straight line navigation, but it distorts everything. And so that's actually, I think, if you grew up in the Northern Hemisphere, one of the ones you're most familiar with. And so you actually have quite a distorted view. And actually, particularly if, we grew up in Europe, and so you tend to put naturally your country center of the map. And if you do that, what you end up doing is you break up the Pacific Ocean on the left and the right of your map.
Yes.
And you also, with the Mercator projection, shrink everything in the Southern Hemisphere somewhat.
Yeah.
And so you neglect the fact that you can pretty much, and I've got this here, so this is my prop for this. Mm-hmm. You can't see it, but I've got a globe in my hand.
Lovely.
Because obviously if you look at a flat map, everything the furthest on the right is actually the point furthest on the left, because it obviously goes around. And I can look at this thing here, and almost the entire view of this globe I'm looking at is the Pacific Ocean. Like, it's almost completely blue from that vantage point. Yeah. And actually, if you turn it up, and this is very rare do you ever do this, if you look at it from Antarctica, straight from the bottom of the planet, so to speak, it's almost all blue as well. That's because the Southern Hemisphere is, vastly more water than it is land compared to the Northern Hemisphere, which is why when you do an antipode, most of them end up in the ocean, which I didn't ever really think about that much before.
Yeah.
Jono, thank you, because I had never heard of antipodes. I like Rob, had heard of Antipodes. And this is exactly the kind of thing that my son Jack would ask. So, Daddy, if I was to drill through the centre of the Earth from here, where would I be? And it would sort of be on that kind of list of questions that kids ask, like, so, Daddy, who do you think has kicked the ball more times, Ronaldo or Messi? Or you're kind of on a beach and I go, Daddy, how many grains of sand are there on this beach? And like, what? Kids always have those sort of amazing questions, don't they? Yeah, you're like, thankfully now we have sort of ChatGPT. You can go, I don't know, Jack, but let's ask this. So antipodes, great new word. And next week I'm going to be in China, which is the antipode of Chile, which, Jono, you and I went to about 20 years ago on that brilliant trip.
Yeah. I have here actually a lovely book called Marvelous Maps, and one of the maps it's got is called an Antipodal Map, which is basically you take the regular projection of the Earth that and then you take the other one, you turn it upside down and back to front and put it overlaid on top of the other one. And
that's a mind bender.
Yeah, no, it is. But it actually shows you really clearly that most of the continents sit over ocean on the opposite side of the world.
That's interesting.
So like most of Europe, Africa and Asia, because the Pacific is so damn big, just sit over the Pacific. Australia is sort of over the North Atlantic. Most of North America sort of over the Indian Ocean. And you can see that really clearly, which actually would have been a lovely addition to the sketch.
An interesting fact I found is that the Australian mainland is the largest landmass with its antipodes entirely in the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
So none of Australia overlaps on that map you've just described as well.
Yeah, just give me a second, because I've got the map on the floor here. 1 sec.
Oh, he's got more. Have you got that? You've got the overlay map there.
Jono loves a map.
Sorry, he doesn't add his face. So you've got that overlay map there with you.
It was just out of reach. Yeah, you guys can't see it.
Yeah, nice.
I don't know how precisely done this one is, but yeah, you see like North America almost directly mirrors the Indian Ocean, and Australia fits sort of neatly in the North Atlantic, remarkably.
That's brilliant.
Which is quite neat.
I feel like culturally in the UK, we talk about the other side of the world, antipodes, but we casually kind of refer to the other side of the world as being Australia, right?
Yeah.
In the UK, where it's not. We're in the sea. But I was trying to find out what that cultural reference is for the US. And I might be wrong in this, but I think it could be China. Not geographically, I should say.
Yeah.
But culturally, they refer to the other side of the world as being China. Now, I might be wrong in that, but if I'm not, and if I may be so bold, That feels a bit silly because like, the USA is in the Northern Hemisphere and China is also in the Northern Hemisphere. How could it be on the other side of the world?
Depends which way you're digging.
Well, through the core.
You don't want to dig through that core. It's very hard, the core.
Well, that's what we're talking about.
Any sensible person would go through the site and go, right. I tell you what, let's start digging and we'll see.
If you were to do a flat line parallel with the slice at the equator, then I think you do sort of naturally end up in the middle of Asia somewhere from North America.
Yeah, but in the Southern Hemisphere, right?
If you do it perpendicular to the surface, yes, you have to dig parallel to the equator, and then you'll come out China. Actually, there was a nice thing, and I didn't realize this until more recently, but like the pode from Antipode, which is why I say that, it's the same pode as podiatry. It means basically feet. So it kind of means opposite feet. So it's the people on the planet who have their feet opposite to you.
If you squish the earth flat and they were standing there and you're
standing on their feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The soles of your feet and the soles of their feet would come together. Oh, lovely.
Links very nicely to another question I'm sure Jack's probably asked me before, which is, who has dug the deepest into the core? I wonder what the record is for the deepest dug down.
Well,
it looks like Jono might have the answer, Tommy.
Yeah, come on, Jono.
No, because it's a good question, isn't it? So first of all, like, how far is an antipode? Like, how far away are they from you?
Yeah.
So I believe they're around 7,900 miles. So that is essentially the diameter
so
of
that
the Earth.
in itself is like a 14-hour flight.
Yeah. So
as it were, if there was a tunnel.
It's a long way.
A long way.
I've got that. To fly there is a 20,000 kilometre flight. We're mixing apples and pears here, kilometres and miles, but
so to go round the Earth is sort of 20,000. To go straight through is 7.
I'm digging through 7,900 miles.
So even if you could fly, you drop even faster.
You drop half of it, and then you have to climb out the other side. It's always fun to think about. But the biggest hole, at least from the book I've got, was we've only ever dug 7.6 miles.
That's a long way down.
Which is an incredible way down. But when you compare it to 7,900.
But it's not even a percentage, right? It's a 0.1, not even 0.1%.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Exactly. So it's a really long way.
The planet's big.
I did another sketch a long time ago, which was just so simple about this fact that the crust of the Earth, which is, the bit that we think is pretty decent and big, is about the same as the skin of an apple.
Nice. In terms of its thickness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So proportional. So it's this tiny little fraction that we've ever got anywhere near. So when Jack asks you, Tom, you can say we've dug 7.6 miles, but as you say, was it 0.1% of the way down to your antipode?
Nice.
Some interesting bits about, because the three of us are based in Britain, there are no parts of Great Britain that have antipodes on land. There are United Kingdom land-based antipodes because we can consider the British overseas territories, like the Pitcairn Islands, Gibraltar, South Georgia Island. So the Pitcairn Islands, you come up near Doha in Qatar, Gibraltar near a beach near Auckland in New Zealand, and South Georgia Island, you pop up somewhere in Russia.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a tiny little island in the middle of the ocean, there's a strong chance that you do have a land-based antipode, as we've established.
Yes, good point.
Yeah. Particularly in the Southern Hemisphere.
Lovely.
Just I think 2 interesting facts, I think. One is that one of the little terms that I quite like is something called the Great Circle, which is, imagine if you had a hoop, like a hula hoop, and you centered it around the middle of the Earth and spun it. All of those are what's called a Great Circle route. You're going in the longest possible way to come back to where you were. So it's quite striking. If you're in Europe and you look at a world map, if you imagine going to the west coast of the US, it looks like you ought to fly across the US to get there.
Yeah.
But in fact, you don't. You take the Great Circle route, which is basically takes you over the top of, over by the Arctic and
Greenland, Canada.
In order to get there. So I think the Great Circle is quite a nice little term. And then the other one about this is that not all antipodes are quite equal because the Earth is not a perfect sphere.
Yes, good point.
And I think the term for it was an oblate spheroid.
Yes. Okay.
Which is if you imagine like you put your fingers at the North Pole and the South Pole and you spun it, which is what's essentially happening.
Yeah.
The mass around the middle is going faster around the equator and is getting pulled out slightly more than the rest of the planet. And so it's slightly sort of bulgy in the middle.
Squished slightly.
Yeah. So the areas around the equator are actually further from the center of the Earth than other parts of the planet further north and south because it's not a perfect sphere.
So if you were to find antipodes on the equator and measure the distance between them, and then you measure the distance between the North and South Pole antipodes, the North and South Pole is going to be shorter than the distance between the antipodes on the equator. I believe
so, though I've not done it. Yeah. So Ecuador to Indonesia is further than North Pole to South Pole, I would presume.
Yeah, good. I've just found something here about my my tunnel through the Earth.
You get zero gravity in the middle, right?
Well, the most interesting thing that I saw in here is that it would take you about 42 minutes to go from one side of the Earth to the other if you just jumped down it.
But you'd
then you'd oscillate.
Yeah.
No,
that's right.
Because you'd go faster and faster and faster and faster till you hit the middle, and then you start slowing down until you got to the other side. And then you'd oscillate straight back down to where you came from. And you'd just go back and forth.
Just the most epic bungee jump you can imagine.
That's frictionless. If it were a frictionless tunnel, I might add.
And you didn't hit the sides.
It didn't hit the sides.
We find a small dwarf planet to mess around with.
That's one deep well.
Yeah. Very cool.
If anybody was interested, I did find quite a fun website.
Digging a hole with you?
No, that's a separate website. I'll be asking for subscribers to that soon. I found a website called antipodesmap.com where you can type in any location. It'll tell you what your antipode is, which is quite fun.
Yeah,
nice. Thank you very much, chaps. Another fun and informative chat. Thank you all for listening. And wouldn't it be great right now if there were 2 of our listeners out there in the world who are antipode related? What are the chances? Wherever you are, go well, stay well. Cheers.
See you. Bye.
All music on this podcast series is provided by the very talented Frank Cinelli. And you can find many more tracks at frankcinelli.com.